Hello, and welcome to Look Who's Cooking. My name is Jeremy Edwards, and today we'll be doing knife techniques. We have various different knives to choose from when it pertains to actually cutting and preparing foods. You kind of want to pick the knife that fits your comfort level and what your actual skill set is. You have various knives with various different applications when it comes to chef knives, butcher knives, boning knives, fillet knives. All those knives have its own purpose, its own length, their own style, and we will discuss how to not only sharpen your knife, but also how to properly use your knife as well. So today, we're going to talk about honing and sharpening. This is what you call a honing rod or steel, as people like to call it in the culinary industry. The steel or the honing knife is basically meant to sharpen the edges of your blade after each use. Using the knife, depending on what you're cutting, can easily dull your knife. And you want to consistently sharpen your knife, not only to have consistent and clean cuts, but also to prevent injury, because a dull knife is an unsafe knife. So the basic way to hold or use a honing rod is to just basically have it pointing down on your cutting board or a non-slip surface and taking your knife and holding it at a 15-degree angle. You want to start from the heel or the bottom of the knife and just gently go down, brushing it along the edge of the honing rod from the base to the tip. And you want to keep doing this consecutively until you feel as though that your blade is sharpened. You want to do this on both sides as well, so if you want to switch, you can do so as well. And for those that are more, I should say, have more experience, most of the time you see them doing it this way. I myself, I'm comfortable doing it this way because I've had years of experience using a knife, but you still want to get that good 15-degree angle on the blade. And you want to hear it brushing against the metal. Now, if you want to figure out how sharp your knife is, you can simply do a paper test. So a copy paper, sheet of paper, or what have you, you're going to take your knife, take the heel of it, and just go down along the edge of the paper. Now that's a sharp knife. And you can do this for all the knives as well. Even a small knife, you can still sharpen that knife. And like I said, each knife has its own purpose, and each knife is meant to cut certain objects. The larger the knife tend to be used for larger objects. So if you're cutting like a watermelon or a large roast or things of that nature, a large 10-inch knife should be sufficient. Anything other than that, herbs or chicken or things of that nature, a simple 8-inch knife does well. You still have this knife, 8-inch knife, but it's fashioned different, and it's meant mainly for slicing because you see the edges right here that helps your product fall off the blade. And you still have your boning knives to get in those small places that a big knife cannot. It's recommended that you do not use a small knife for a large object. You don't want to use a small boning knife to cut watermelon, even though it may be a sharp knife, is a hazard of cutting yourself or hurting someone else. Also, you simply want to also follow the recommendations of the knife manufacturer. It's not recommended that you use a dishwasher or things of that nature to clean your knives because the washing process and the chemicals can dull your knives. Secondly, cutting boards are also essential as well. The proper cutting board can also determine how quickly your knife dulls. Anything that's glass, metal, or stone can easily dull your knife. And also, it doesn't create a non-slip surface for the cutting process. So you probably want to use maybe wooden or plastic. Plastic tends to be the best choice of cutting boards because it's easy to maintain and easy to clean. And it doesn't show as many scars as when you're cutting it. So right now, we're going to show you a quick demonstration on how to properly hold your knife and how to properly hold your product that you're going to cut. Today we're going to cut some green onions. So with your knife hand, whether you're left or right, you want to hold the knife in a way that's comfortable. Most knives have a grip where your index finger can rest behind it, and your thumb, you want to press firmly on the top of the knife. Your thumb can extend past the handle, which is perfectly fine, as long as your grip is firm. You want to make sure that your knife is an extension of your body, and you want to respect it as so. When it comes to cutting, always keep your knife on the cutting board. Chopping and doing things like that, it may look and sound good, but it's very unsafe. Only leave that to trained professionals. But when you're cutting, you want to rock, keeping the tip of your knife on the cutting board at all times. Rocking this, you still have a lot of space under the knife, and you're not dangerously lifting it off of the cutting board. You always want to have that good firm grip on your knife when cutting. If your knuckles hit the table, that's okay. You want to take your time when cutting. You don't want to go fast. You don't want to do things that you see on television or social media with the fast chopping, because, like I said, those people are trained professionals. When it comes to holding the product in your non-knife hand, which is my left, you want to get a claw. I like to call it a claw, but you want to make sure your fingers are curled, your thumb is tucked behind your fingers, and it's also curled. In a way that when you're cutting, the knife is just going to touch the outer edges of your knuckle, not touching the fingertips, because your fingertips are tucked. And remember, you're doing that rocking motion where you can see how the blade is just resting on the knuckle as I'm cutting. And I'll give you a quick demonstration. So we'll take our green onions, slice them kind of thin. I might go a little fast, but I'll slow down just so you guys can catch it. Normally, when you're cutting things, you want to make sure it's even and you get a good grip. So you can see how I'm gripping the product and still keeping my fingers curled and tucked. And then placing the knife on where I want to start my first cut and just going slow. And you see how easy it looks. And once you get practice, you can just go fast. While you're doing that, you want to keep in mind, as you're slicing, your fingers are sliding back after each cut. So you're making sure that you're still cutting your product and not your fingers. And you just want to keep cutting, rocking, slicing, taking your time first and foremost. And also always keep your eyes on what it is that you're doing. Don't want to be distracted and looking somewhere else and slice your fingers. And that is pretty much the proper way of cutting. Now, we need to consider proper cutting board technique. When you're cutting things on your cutting board, you want to make sure that you're on a sturdy, level table with good lighting, and also you want to put a wet towel underneath your cutting board like so. Applying a wet towel underneath your cutting board prevents your cutting board from slipping. Slipping can cause injury, so that's one thing you want to consider, is putting a damp towel, either a rag or paper towel, underneath your cutting board like so, and it just prevents your board from sliding or doing things of that nature while you're cutting. Another tip to consider is when properly washing and storing knives, those things can affect the sharpness of your knife as well. Washing knives, especially in the dishwasher, can dull them, so you want to wash them by hand. But you also want to be careful, do not leave your knife in the sink, because you can easily grab the knife by the blade while it's in the water. So when you're washing your knife, hold it by the handle. Dip it in the water, wash it, put it away. That's the best option. Also, when storing your knives, you want to be careful about storing your knives in a drawer or some place that has other metal objects in them. They can bang around, they can chip, they can also even break your knife depending on the type of knife that you have. So you want to be careful when putting your knife in a storage area, you want to preferably put it in a case or a sheath. You want to put your knife in a place where the knife is the only thing in that particular container or storage area. This prevents your knife from dulling and it adds longevity to your blades. Also, another thing to consider is the quality of the blade. You do have various options of what price point you can buy a knife, but you want to tend to stay away from the cheaper options because they're used with cheaper materials which can cause things to break or rust. And you don't want that to happen, especially if you spent a good dollar on a knife set.